Number 5. The BASAND vase. When we think of cursed objects, we start to go through the classics, you know, haunted dolls, haunted paintings, even the old haunted diamond. You don't tend to think of haunted glassware. Well, let the BASAND vase introduce itself. A seemingly unassuming piece of home decor, this sinister flower pot carries with it a deadly curse and legacy. First crafted in the 15th century, the BASAND vase was given to a bride as a wedding gift in Napoli, Italy. The day of the wedding, the husband couldn't find his betrothed anywhere. Upon returning home, he found her on the floor, clutching the vase. After her funeral, the vase was given out to one of her family members, who then fell ill within days and had passed away. Of course, no one assumed the vase had anything to do with it, why would it? Despite a suspicious trail already starting to form. The third person to inherit the vase also ended up passing away mysteriously. Well, after the third mysterious death in months, the family contacted a local priest for advice on their situation, and he gave them some reasonable advice. Bury it on hallowed grounds, where no one would find it again. It lay dormant until it was dug up in 1988 by an amateur antique hunter, who sold the vase off quickly, restarting the treacherous cycle where it traveled once again, ending lives mysteriously and ruining an otherwise nicely decorated living room. After its revival, it was brought to the attention of local police. They tried to pass it off to museums or cultural sites, but understandably, no one wanted anything to do with the wretched pot. So with nowhere else to turn, legend goes that the police returned it where it had once been found, buried deep beneath hallowed ground. Hopefully a little bit deeper this time, maybe in a lockbox with 3 padlocks and throw away the keys into the ocean. You know, just to be safe. Are you enjoying yourself, my little ghouls and goblins? Click the subscribe button down below for daily frights from Top 5 Scary. Number 4. The Iceman. The Iceman cometh for us all. In 1991, on the peak of the Ozzol Alps in Italy, a pair of mountaineering tourists came across what they thought was a deceased hiker, which in a grandiose sense was kind of true. Not a recent passing, however, because the Iceman in question was dated from 3000 BC. The nature of his passing is unknown, so the criminal could still be out there at large. A fascinating find for the scientific community. The Iceman, nicknamed Otzi after the mountain he was found in, shined a light on history previously unseen. Otzi was the oldest body ever discovered with tattoos. History's first bad boy, if you will. After being unearthed, the body was brought to Austria to be studied intensively, but nothing the researchers discovered could have prepared them for the curse that they had unearthed. A worrying amount of people involved in the study of the Iceman found themselves befuddled to an ancient unearthed evil. The first man to discover Otzi, one of the hikers, fell off a path on a mountain to his doom. A mountaineer passed in an avalanche. A forensic pathologist was involved in a lethal car accident en route to give a speech at a university about the Iceman. In total, 7 researchers involved in the study of the Iceman and observers found themselves losing their life after meeting him. So where is the Iceman now? Hopefully supervised? Well, Otzi is currently being held in the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology down in the bottom of Italy, where he is kept in a climate-controlled environment to maintain his preservation. Locked away, visitors are permitted to come see the Iceman, but only through a frozen, thick glass window. Is that room to keep him cool and preserved? Or is it to keep whatever curse lay dormant inside his bones docile? All we know is that we're thankful that Otzi's just chillin'. Number 3. The Woman of LEMB. Modern art can be a bit confusing. It's hard to understand an artist's true meaning behind their work, especially when things start to get abstract. Looking at the woman from LEMB statue, it's hard to even make out what this is supposed to be. A fertility statue? Primitive bog roll holder? You wouldn't even know just by looking at it just how lethally cursed this statue is. We don't know who crafted this or why, but we do know that under no circumstances whatsoever should you ever touch the Woman of LEMB statue, lest you're looking to incur the wrath of a centuries-old evil. The statue was first uncovered in 1878 in LEMB, Cyprus, giving the statue its name. Carbon dating suggests the statue was formed around 3000 BC. Hey, wait a minute. Do you think Otzi the Iceman ever saw this statue? You think maybe it's the same curse? Was life just significantly more cursed back then? Now back on hand to the topic. Once the statue was found, it began to wreak havoc almost immediately. Legend says 4 families are purported to have lost someone after touching the statue. The first owner, one Lord Elfont, a lord during Cyprus's time as a colony, lost 7 members of his family after acquiring the statue. Sometime afterwards, the next lord to acquire it, Ivor Minucci, obtained the statue and lost his entire family in the span of 4 years. The next victim, one one Lord Thompson Knoll. Just like the others, his family passed away within 4 years. The stories say that eventually, his remaining surviving sons, understanding that they had a responsibility to rid themselves of this generational evil, gave the statue off to the Royal Scottish Museum in Edinburgh for safekeeping, or maybe just to pass the curse along like a vicious cycle of regifting. Within a year, the museum curator passed away mysteriously. Right now, it's still kept there, locked away behind a glass box, never to be touched again by human hands. Let's try and keep it that way. Number 2, the Hope Diamond. Now, the Hope Diamond has shown up a few times on this channel before, and for good reason. It's considered one of the most haunted objects on the planet. The diamond was first uncovered in India, with reports claiming that the diamond was plucked from the eye of a statue of the goddess Sita, the goddess of beauty and devotion. Legend has it that the first person who ever stole the diamond was attacked by dogs shortly after taking it. From here, the diamond made its way through countless hands, never staying in one pair of hands for too long though. It's said to have been owned by King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, who as far as I know, never had anything too bad happen to them. You know, at least nothing worth losing your head over. That's a little history joke for you. Look up the French Revolution, or Assassin's Creed Unity. It's the same thing. Throughout the diamond's storied history, it's been said that just about every owner of the Hope Diamond suffered a horrific fate. 14 confirmed deaths and owners throughout history, and that's only the ones we know of, as there could be countless more. The jeweler who recut the stone into its current form, William Falls, died a ruined man in poverty and hardship after his son Hendrik stole the stone from his father, who would later be prompted to take his own life as repentance for his crime. After passing from owner to owner under grisly circumstances, it finally made its way to Harry Winston, an American jeweler who, possibly making the first smart choice of anyone on this list, thought it better to play with his odds, and donated the diamond to the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in 1958, where it currently resides sealed away to this day. So what happened when it became museum property? Well, the curators of the Smithsonian were thrilled to receive it, and have said that they consider the gem a crown jewel of their diamond collection, and that in all the time it's been in their watch, no one has suffered any ill effects, and if anything, visitors have gone up. Maybe Indiana Jones was right. Maybe it belongs in a museum. Number 1, King Tut. Now, number 1 on our list might be a little bit esoteric. It's the curse of King Tutankhamun, so not quite an object, but worth noting. King Tutankhamun, or King Tut as his close friends like to call him, is arguably the most famous pharaoh of all time. Uncovering his tomb was a landmark moment in Egyptology and archaeology, with his tomb serving as something of a golden goose for archaeologist Howard Carter, who spearheaded the excavation attempts of King Tut's tomb. It took years upon years of concentrated efforts hunting for it, but in 1922, Howard Carter, under the commission of Lord Carnarvon, uncovered the late pharaoh's mighty tomb. Howard Carter, Lord Carnarvon, and their companion Evelyn Beauchamp, the daughter of Carnarvon, were the first people to ever step inside King Tutankhamun's resting place in centuries. Unfortunately, it wouldn't go so well for them. The first victim was Lord Carnarvon. Upon entering the tomb, he was bitten by a mosquito, and mere weeks later, the bite became deeply infected, poisoning his blood, leading to a loss of life. The author of Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, upon reading this story in the news, had theorized that there was a curse put in place by the old gods watching over Tutankhamun's tomb. And that's the guy who created Sherlock Holmes, so let's assume he's probably pretty smart and doesn't just jump to conclusions. The next victim, George Gould, was a visitor to the tomb who developed an intense fever shortly after walking through it. Within months, he had passed away. Next was A.C. Mace, a digger on the excavation team, passed from an intense case of pneumonia shortly after his involvement. Howard Carter's secretary, Captain Bethel, was the next victim, passing away 6 years after the unearthing under mysterious circumstances, believed to have been smothered in his sleep. Now, Howard Carter, the original excavationist who helmed the venture, didn't believe anything about the curse, claiming that it was all superstition and coincidence, not fitting an educated man. He complained, however, that after unearthing the tomb, whenever he would visit Egypt, he noticed repeated sightings of jackals, the same type of Anubis, the Egyptian god of the dead. Which, I've gotta say, if I recently uncovered a legendary pharaoh and interrupted his slumber to plunder his riches for my personal gain, I would probably be a bit wary about seeing a symbol of the god of the dead following me around. 16 years later, Howard Carter would pass away of Hodgkin's disease. Could he have been the last victim of the curse, or did he manage to escape its throes? The king still rests in his tomb in Cairo, where he shall not be disturbed. You're more than welcome to go visit him if you'd like, but please, be respectful.
Number 5 on this list is Bigfoot. Bigfoot, or the Sasquatch, is a big biped ape-like creature that is said to roam the forests of North America. This creature has been the topic of North American folklore for years and has had thousands of sightings. This legend is so widely known and researched that it even has a Bigfoot Field Researchers organization that has documented all of the reported sightings and counted them up from each area. To put it in perspective, Washington has over 2,000, California over 1,600, Pennsylvania with over 1,300, and many other states with similar numbers as well. Now, most people have chalked this up to being a legend with no actual legitimacy to it. The example given by most skeptics is that those who have seen Bigfoot didn't actually see the creature, but saw a bear or some other animal that resembled the Sasquatch instead. This explanation is good enough for most people, but believe it or not, it wasn't good enough for the American government. That's right, guys, the American government has actually investigated Bigfoot. It all started when one of the leading Bigfoot researchers, Peter Byron, sent some unidentified hairs to the FBI. He told them that his team found these hairs and could not identify what type of animal it was. Now, rather than throw this out as being mumbo jumbo, the FBI actually took Peter seriously and analyzed the hairs. 4 decades later, the FBI declassified their Bigfoot file, and it turned out that their analysis of the hairs linked them to the deer family. Now, even though that may be the case, why did the FBI take this so seriously? Why would the actual American government spend time, money, and resources analyzing these hairs in a classified operation if there was no legitimacy to the Bigfoot claims? Now, this isn't evidence of the existence of Bigfoot. However, it makes me believe that the government, they might know a little bit more about this than they're letting on. Maybe they've actually encountered Bigfoot before, and they aren't quite ready to make the urban legend a reality. Number 4 on this list is weaponized lightning. The thought of weaponizing lightning seems like something out of a comic book. In fact, it's been portrayed in comic books like Thor or movies like Star Wars as a super special power that only somebody with incredible abilities can possess. That may not be totally true though, because the government has discovered a way to control it. It's all very complicated, but the concept is that lightning will follow a path of ionized air and can be directed to go anywhere we want. Manipulating lightning wasn't discovered by the United States government by accident, but it was very much on purpose. In 1967, the CIA was funding a super secret project to weaponize lightning and use it in warfare. This project was funded for some time until it was eventually shut down. The project was classified for decades until finally being released to the public many years later. The thing about all of this though is that some don't actually think they stopped trying. In fact, in 2012, an article by the BBC talked about how US Army scientists are still trying to develop a gun that will fire a bolt of lightning. This lightning rifle could fire off 50 billion watts of energy. That's more power than a large city would need to function. Turning lightning into a weapon is still being funded to this day. That's pretty scary to me because 50 billion watts feels like too much power for a human to be able to wield. It also begs the question, what other things is the government funding right now that they don't want us to know about? Number 3 on this list is the 2004 UFO. This UFO has been later called the Tic Tac and was massive news when the footage was finally released to the public a few years ago. On November 10th, 2004, Kevin Day saw a very strange object show up on his radar. It was too slow to be a plane, too fast to be a bird, and moving along an unconventional air path. Apparently, another crew member saw this object and said that it had the capability to drop from 60,000 feet to only 50 feet in the air without producing a sonic boom, and unlike any man-made aircraft that we've ever seen. Chad Underwood was the man who actually made the recording of this UFO, and it's clear that this thing is unlike any aircraft that we're familiar with. I imagine that most of you have seen this video before, but for those who haven't, let's roll a few seconds of it to show you what I mean.
Winds 120 miles to the west. Look at that thing, dude.
Now, that video wasn't officially released by the Pentagon until many years later, and that leads a lot of people to ask the question, was this unidentified flying object actually the work of aliens? Did the government know about this thing flying through the air prior to the video and then needed to cover it up? Why is the government releasing the videos years later? Are they trying to slowly adjust us to the reality that aliens are real? Is this UFO even connected to aliens, or is it something else entirely? All of these questions have arisen in regards to this video, and as one would expect, the government isn't exactly forthcoming with all the answers. This video doesn't prove the existence of aliens. In fact, it doesn't really prove a whole lot of anything. As of right now, it's something that we just simply can't explain. Or as some people have theorized, maybe that's just what the government wants us to think. Number 2 on this list is the UFO program. Keeping on the train of UFOs, it's currently believed that the government has already discovered some and are currently keeping them hidden from the public. Now, I should be a little bit more specific about this because the term UFO specifically refers to flying objects. The reports that I'll be referring to aren't specifically about objects being able to fly, but that the government is currently in possession of off-world vehicles. Specifically, what these vehicles can do is not disclosed. Now, the whole existence of a secretive government-run program specifically investigating UFOs and otherworldly vehicles, it's been debated for years. However, it's largely believed at this point that the government does have a program like this and likes to keep all of their findings from the public. Now, just the existence of a program like this doesn't mean that the government has some secret, scary alien discovery. However, at the very least, it means that they have seen enough evidence of something going on to invest lots of money into discovering what it is. Now, the reason that I say the government might have some off-world vehicles that they're keeping from the public is because of the reports from Eric Davis. Eric Davis was an astrophysicist who worked for the Pentagon, and he was part of the UFO program. He's come out and talked about some of the things they had him work on. He says that some of those things he investigated were off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. He then goes on to say that we couldn't make the materials ourselves. This is an astrophysicist who's worked on some extremely classified material coming out and saying this. In my mind, that's pretty clear-cut evidence that the government is currently in possession of some secret object that they don't want the public to know about. Whether this object is an indicator of extraterrestrial life or something else is currently unknown, and as of right now, seems like the government wants to keep it that way. Number 1 on this list is Iran's military dolphins. That's right, guys, you heard me correctly. Iran's military dolphins. The country of Iran is currently in possession of militarized dolphins trained to blow up ships. Truthfully, this story is just one big government controversy. It all started when the Soviets started developing these secret dolphin soldiers. They trained these intelligent aquatic mammals to become weapons of the sea. They attached harpoons on the dolphin's back and trained the creatures to use them, and then also strapped bombs to the dolphins and trained them so that they could become suicide bombers of the ocean. The thinking was that they could send these dolphins out to blow up American submarines. The dolphins were able to tell the difference between an American sub and a Soviet sub based on the sounds that the propeller made. All of this sounds like it came straight out of a cartoon, but I swear that it's actually true. In 1991, the Soviet Union fell, and then 9 years later their dolphin project lost its funding. But rather than let the dolphins die or release these weaponized creatures into the oceans, they sold them to Iran. Boris Zurid, the Russian dolphin trainer, has come out and said, "If I were a sadist, then I could have remained in Sevastopol, but I cannot bear to see my animals starve. We're out of medicine, which costs thousands of dollars, and have no more fish or food supplements." But after they were sold to Iran, they weren't out of food or supplements at all. In fact, all reports suggest that the Iranian government has continued with this weaponized dolphin program and are still in possession of them. This isn't widely talked about because the Iranian government doesn't really want people to know about their secret ocean weapon. Not just because they don't want other governments to know about their use of the dolphins, but also because of the moral questions that arise with this information. Is it acceptable to weaponize a dolphin and have it become a suicide bomber? Iran doesn't really want that type of media coverage. It's really kind of frightening to think about, but our favorite aquatic mammals? They could actually be trained to kill us.
Coming in at number 5, we have secret experiments. This is nothing new. The government has been up to all sorts of secret experiments. If we go back through the 20th century, we have things like MK Ultra. This is when the CIA and the American government was obsessed with mind control and trying to find some way to implement it into warfare and interrogations. Some of the things they would do is take someone and put them in isolation for an undetermined amount of time and see if they would break mentally and start giving up information. They would mostly do do this on prisoners that had no idea they were part of an experiment. Wow, that definitely sounds ethical, but that isn't even the most notorious part. What the experiment is really famous for is when the CIA would use LSD, that is a hallucinatory drug known as acid, to try and control people's minds in interrogations. They would give people doses of LSD without them knowing and put them under extreme questioning. Once again, they would do this to people who had no idea they were being experimented on. Eventually, the tests were all stopped and a lot of the information on the studies was released to the public. Some people think that this was just a lost attempt at trying to find a way to control people, but other people are convinced that the government was successful in finding some way to take control over people's minds. So this begs the question, what kind of secret studies or experiments is the government conducting now? We think that they have learned their lesson from their mistakes, but it's the government. They are the masters of doing things that cost tons of money and that are extremely unethical. This is their bread and butter, baby. They could be doing tests on artificial intelligence without us knowing, working on making a living, thinking AI that has the ability to feel emotions and make complex decisions. Not only would this be terrifying, but the tests they could be running could be seen as some sort of torture in the future. Coming in at number 4, we have receiving data from social media companies. When it comes to data and information, we know that the government can't be trusted. They will find some way to get your stuff. It doesn't matter what your data is. Do you spend 2 hours a day looking at memes? The government wants to know about it. Do you have a habit of ordering McDonald's delivered right to your house even though you live 5 minutes away from the nearest Donnie's? The government wants to know about that too. Am I just sharing with you my bad tendencies that I should probably stop because they are holding me back? That could be a possibility too. But we already know that the NSA was looking at all your phone calls, all of your emails, and collecting all of your data back in 2013, and you think just because we caught them they were gonna stop? No way! Then Facebook got caught for selling data, and you don't think that other major companies aren't doing the same thing? Data is the most valuable thing on the planet right now, and there's no way that the government doesn't have their hands in the pot somewhere. That was the big problem with TikTok. It's Chinese owned, so America didn't want their data flying out to another country from the American people, but they are perfectly fine with it staying in the hands of the American people, probably because they're getting a piece of it. Coming at number 3, we have secret weapons, especially in America where the military funding is through the roof. Who knows what sort of technological advancements are happening behind closed doors? I don't think we will ever know what's going on until they want us to know. Places like Area 51 have stayed secret forever, and even when there was supposed to be a massive raid, which just turned out to be a bunch of people hanging out in the desert for a good laugh, none of the secrets have leaked out. Well, not none of them. There are some people who have claimed to work at Area 51 and have leaked some secrets. Most famously is Bob Lazar. If you follow the content I'm a part of, then you will for sure have heard me talk about Bob Lazar before. He is known as the man who worked at Area 51 and then started spilling the beans about what was going on there. There's a documentary about him on Netflix, and he has been on Rogan talking about some of the stuff that he worked on. Now, Bob has never claimed to work on any sort of weaponry. He says that all the stuff he worked on had to do with flight. He was working on a new type of spaceship that can move faster than anything we could comprehend. Basically, the way he described it is these secret spaceships use what's called a gravity reactor, which bends gravity around them that lets a ship move at an insane speed. It's a form of propulsion that was thought to be impossible, and he says that it's not only possible, but it uses something called element 115 to happen. This is the substance that is used in the gravity reactor. Even though Bob has never worked on anything to do with weaponry, he did mention that there was some sort of evidence of weaponry testing and design using element 115. What on earth could that look like? What does a gravity gun or gravity bomb do to a person or an entire city? Bob worked with the government in Area 51 back in the 80s, so who knows what kind of advancements they have made since then. The American government could be hiding a weapon that could have the destructive capabilities to take out an entire country or blow up the moon. Or if they could shoot nukes faster than the speed of light, there wouldn't be a lot of time to get shelter and protect your people if that gets fired at you. Well, let's hope we never have to experience something like that, because I don't want the world ending right now. And there's also things like Project HARP, a system of radio towers in Alaska that apparently have the ability to control the weather and even cause things like powerful earthquakes. Imagine you could weaponize the weather, cause lightning lightning and hail to decimate your enemy. It would be like they're in the movie Geostorm. You could make the terrain too cold to fight on, or make the weather too erratic for your enemy to grow crops to feed their troops. They would quickly be bending the knee to your godlike power. There's also rumors that Project HARP has the ability to send out a low frequency signal to a large area and cause an entire population to pass out. You could incapacitate an entire city. Alright, coming in at number 2 we have aliens. I mean, we were just talking about Area 51, so it only makes sense that we talk about aliens for a little bit. The government has known about aliens for a long time, and they just started telling us. They need to open the door and let us know all the things about these little green dudes walking around, because I want to become their friend and go on a crazy space adventure. Now, if you want to go really deep, you could say that aliens are running the government, and that is why they won't spill the beans. But that's not the vibe we're going for today. What I'm going to focus on is the fact that we know the government has been hiding the truth about aliens, because they recently declassified a lot of alien files and started showing us UFOs and the fact that they are real. They even released government footage of a UFO. There was a legit flying saucer caught on camera just floating around, and no one reacted at all. Mind you, the world was kind of on fire at that point with all the protests and coronavirus, but it's still crazy and no one cared. But here's what I'm thinking. There's no way that they told us everything. There's no way that the little bit of footage and documents that were shown to us was everything they have to offer. And the stuff that they're hiding is probably the best stuff. I bet they have a full alien language mapped out that you can learn on Rosetta Stone. And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Jeffrey Epstein's involvement with the government. This is a massive conspiracy that is still in the forefront of most news stories. It is the wildest story to hit America mainstream media in years, and really it's just getting started. If you don't know what's going on, let me fill you in. Jeffrey Epstein was a mystery multimillionaire. No one really knew where he got his money from. He was associated with some of the most rich and powerful people in the world, people in the film and television industry, high-ranking government officials, even members of the royal family of England have connections to this guy. Jeffrey Epstein was a known human trafficker, and he had an island which we suspected was a place where rich and powerful people would fly to partake in human trafficking with victims that were not of legal age. I can't go into detail on what would happen there, it is too inappropriate for this channel, but when you hear private island, human trafficking, not of legal age, rich and powerful people, I think you can piece together what was happening. And if you want things in more detail, just literally Google Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Jeffrey Epstein had a plane which was nicknamed the Lolita Express. That alone is extremely disturbing. When you start to go into the flight logs on this plane, you start to find a lot of wealthy people. Many of them were high-ranking government officials. People like Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Tom Pritzker, a member of one of the richest families in the United States, and former president of Colombia, Andres Pastrana. The list goes on and on. Then one day Jeffrey Epstein is arrested, and it looks like he's going to have to stand trial for all of his horrible offenses and spill the beans. But before he gets the chance, he mysteriously dies in jail. It seems very convenient that someone who could probably ruin so many rich and powerful people died out of nowhere. So the question is, how deep do the Epstein ties go into the government? And if you thought the story was over, oh, we are far away from the end. Epstein's right-hand woman, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the person who would find many of these people to take to Epstein's island, is now under arrest and set to stand trial. And in a strange turn of events, the president was questioned about her being in jail, and he said, "I wish her well." What does that mean? Who knows?